everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Watch Out. I'm your host, Drew Pizzulo, and welcome to my new series. Many of you may have recognized me from my former series with my co-host Jared of It's About Time. We ran that for 2 years and 100 episodes, and now since it's 2019, I am bringing you this new series, which is going to explore many of the things we explored in the last series, with additional other projects that we will delve into as well. The first thing I want to actually bring to you tonight is the fundamental basics of a watch or a clock. But before I break that down for you, I would first like to give a sincere congratulations to my former co-host Jared Sharp, his wife Tracy, and their new daughter Jordana. She was born on Monday, January 14th, 2019. Okay, Jared and I are like brothers, so gotta tell you, very happy for all of them. It's his first child. I look forward to spending many more memories with them in the future. And as we watch her grow up, as we all know, a baby is a beautiful gift. And it just shows you that time is short and you should experience every memory you can. And I'm sure they will do so, as they've created many memories so far and many to come in the future. To tonight's episode, which starts off this series of Watch Out. How many of you actually know the components of a watch or a clock? The main components. I'm not talking about hairsprings. I'm not talking about, all the nuts, bolts, gaskets that go into a watch. Because as we know, there's quartz watches and there's automatics, and both have different pieces to them. I'm talking about the main functions of a clock slash watch, and particularly tonight, a quartz clock or watch, because that's basically what most of the population does have. It basically has 7 main components, and if you're using a wall clock, obviously the first thing that's always going to start off is the hanging piece. So we're really not counting that as one, but that does come with it as well. The first piece that everybody has to go by is, it all starts with the clock's movement. Okay, either a watch or a clock movement. If you take a clock and you shrink it down into a micro-sized proportion, obviously that's a watch. So these apply both to clocks and watches. And what you have here is the actual movement. And in the movement, in the back, obviously, you have the place for a battery. In a watch, it would be a lot smaller, obviously. In a clock, it's usually a AAA or a AA battery. In the front, you have over here, which is the shaft, okay? And the shaft is where the rest of the watch or clock is connected. But it all begins with the clock's movement or watch's movement. So that is the first piece that what you would have to do. In this case, we have to attach the wall piece to the clock's movement, because it has to hang somewhere. The second piece that everything has, and it doesn't matter if it's a clock or a watch, is the rubber gasket. Okay, the rubber gasket starts this whole myriad of contraptions. So basically what you have to do after you get the wall piece on, you have to attach the rubber gasket, which goes such as that. Then, piece number 3, which, again, whether it's a watch or a clock, has to have a face or a dial. In this case, we're just going to use a version of a Rolex-looking face, okay? And here you go. You take a face, and this is a Rolex Submariner face. I'm just giving you big examples for you, so you can see how these fit. So you take the movement, you take the rubber gasket, and the next thing that would go on, you attach it to, is the face. Okay, and if we go down like that, kind of looks like a pizza, but you can see how things are starting to shape up. Okay, so you do have the face, which is step number 3. Number 4, you have to have something to obviously separate the hands and the face, so they always give you a washer. Washer fits over the shaft. You thread it on down to the bottom of the face, such as that. Okay? And there is the washer, which is step number 4. Step number 5, to start locking things in, they give you what is called a hex nut. Okay, and that's what a hex nut looks like if one has never seen one. And what you do basically with the hex nut, when you put it on, you then have to screw it in because the shaft is threaded and the hex nut will be threaded right into the shaft. So as I screw the hex nut into the shaft, right there, and it's nice and tight, therefore everything is together. Now you can notice the clock movement, okay, it is properly, you can, again, there's the wall piece right here, you have the clock movement, you do have the watch face, you have the washer, you have the hex nut, and you have the thread right here. Everything is in alignment, so when I put the hands on and put it back on the wall, everything will work correctly. Okay, the next thing that is on a watch or a clock, obviously, is going to be the hour hand. The hour hand obviously goes first. It is the first piece that does go on a clock, and you have to actually push it, just like they do, watchmakers do the same thing. They push it in through the shaft, therefore it has time that it can move around, such as that. Now the shaft is designed so multiple pieces can move at the same time, but they also make sure that hex nuts and washers are added in between them so they can both move at different varies of degrees and time. See, if I do this, you can see how it is attached, so it does move. Okay? The next piece, now you would think, is there another washer or a washer or a hex nut that goes in between both the hour hand and the minute hand? No, there's not. These two actually go on the shaft in different places. So as the hour hand goes farther down, the minute hand, which would be technically the last piece, goes much farther up. And then you want to make sure, as a watchmaker would, that they don't touch each other. Obviously, if they touch each other, then they wouldn't be able to move separately. So as you can see, once you put the minute and the hour hand on, they're not touching each other, so they can both move freely, as that would make a clock or a watch work. And finally, you would have, theoretically, a second hand that goes after this one to make it click, tick, or, in the case of an automatic watch, sweep. However, a lot of these wall clocks do not even have a second hand for this purpose. But the thing that pulls it and ties everything together is your battery. And without the battery, ladies and gentlemen, nothing works. So obviously you put the battery in the back. In a watch, you would do the same thing. You would stick your battery in here. It's a AA. Most clocks and watches, it's a single A. And as predicted, it is ticking. So obviously, I did everything correctly, as you can hear it. Hopefully you can hear that tick. And the wall clock, therefore, is complete. So remember, the complexities of a clock or a watch are actually pretty simple, especially when it comes to quartz watches or quartz wall clocks. You do have the clock movement, you have the rubber gasket, you have the dial, you have the washer, you have the hex nut, you have the hour hand, you have the minute hand, and in most cases a second hand, and what would cap them off sometimes would be a cap nut to tie them all together. So once again, guys, that is the building block basics of how a clock or a watch functions. Before I end this episode, let me just get to my fun fact of the night. And that would be, has anybody ever tried the brand Cheeriol? My wife just recently got this for Christmas. I didn't know much about the brand. We saw this on our trip to the Caribbean. I've recently researched and learned a lot about this brand. And if you don't really know anything about it, it's actually related to another famous brand. The watchmaker from, believe it or not, Cartier started this brand, Philippe Cheeriol, back in 1983. And these two brands are interrelated. Philippe was a very famous watchmaker for them. And he was also in the business of marketing and advertising. So he had a hand in making Cartier the known brand that it is today. And he started his own company after his own name and called it Cheeriol. And Cheeriol has men and women's watches, and they are most designed by adding the basis of, they came to fame pretty much from their coin bezels over here, but they were the first ones to actually use cable wire, metal cable wire in their watches. This is not an example of that, but it does give you an example of the other thing that they do very nice. They are like a mixture between Cartier and Rado. The Cartier, because the looks very, very similar to Cartier. They have a little bit of vulgarity to them because they like adding that jewelry aspect to it. And Rado, obviously, because the band is not only stainless steel, but it is also ceramic, black ceramic, which Rado is known for and has created. So they've taken those two things, married them into their own brand, and there you go. If you haven't seen Cheeriol, give it a try, guys. I'm sure you'll like it, especially for women's watches. Men's watches, they have less quartz. Sometimes they do have automatic, but what you will basically find is mostly quartz with Cheeriol. So they range, if you're looking at the price range of it, they usually range anywhere between, I'd say, $800 to $1,500 for most pieces of this brand. You can find them on eBay cheaper. I know I got my wife's around $430, $440, brand new. So take a look on places such as eBay to see if you can get them half price. But outside of that, they are a great watch brand. Most of them are 5 ATM, so they can go underwater. And they do have a nice look to them, a nice heavy feel, and a unique design. So please check them out as our fun fact of the day. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you next month in February as I look to be here, hopefully with my former co-host Jared, as we will explore Oris and the Source of Life watch that it just came out with. We'll do a watch review on that as well. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time on another episode of Watch Out.